Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of Demystifying Money. I am joined by Tess Waresmith. She is the founder of Wealth with Tess, and she is somebody who's grown her own net worth by $500,000 over the past 4 years. And she has done that by really taking control of her finances and working through some financial shame and mistakes that she feels she made along the way. And she's here to talk with us about it. And I'm super excited to hear more about how she helps people with their money, since I really just believe that this is so important for everybody. And a lot of people have been paying attention to things that are going on in the news right now. They see that banks are impacted. They're thinking about their jobs and their salary. And I think that it's always a good time to get your finances under control and be aware of what's going on and what you need, but never so much as like when there are some situations, there's financial recessions, like people are talking about this stuff. It's a really good time to just understand your situation if you're feeling out of control or scared or lost. So thank you, Tess, so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Misty. I love what you do, and I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. So you now you are, somebody, financial coach now, but that wasn't how things started out for you. Tell me a little bit more about, what your first job was and how you ended up working with people on their finances.
Absolutely. So I actually graduated into a recession and I got rejected from a bunch of jobs. And long story short, ended up working on a cruise ship as an aerial acrobat. After spending, a lot of time and energy getting my bachelor's, I ended up becoming a circus performer essentially. But that actually ended up being a great thing because I didn't have any expenses. I didn't have to pay for food or rent. So I was able to save a lot of money. I was, lucky enough to get a scholarship to school, so I didn't have student loan debt. And I ended up really early on wanting to make sure that I was doing something smart with my money. And I knew that I was supposed to invest it, but I didn't know anything about investing. So I found a financial advisor, somebody I knew, somebody that I trusted, and I gave them my money and was just like, okay, here you go. And truly did not understand anything. I didn't understand the fees. I didn't understand what they were doing. And so a few years went by. I got more into investing. I actually started investing in real estate, and I knew more about real estate investing than stock market investing, which is a little bit backwards, I think. But after that experience, I really wanted to make sure I understood what they were doing. And after I sat down with my financial advisor, I was asking a lot of questions about the fees and why I was in certain products. This financial advisor, who is a certified financial planner, had sold me an annuity, and I didn't really understand like why and how that made sense. And so after a lot of self-research and asking other friends and other, interviewing a lot of other investors, I realized that a lot of what this person was doing on my behalf wasn't in my best interest. The funds that I was invested in were super high fee. The annuity that was sold to me was a better fit for somebody that was in their 50s, not necessarily in their late 20s. And I was so upset. Like I had so much shame. I felt so stupid that I had just given my money over and never looked at it, and that I didn't understand all these things that were going on. And after that, I did a lot of research and I realized that investing isn't actually as complicated as everyone thinks it is. And so I think a lot of people stop even thinking about learning about it because they immediately think, oh, investing, like that's something that I can't possibly learn. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the education to learn that. And after this experience I had that kind of forced me to learn all this stuff, I realized, oh, it's not that complicated. And there's a lot of different ways to go about it and be an informed investor, whether you work with a financial advisor or not, that can give you so much more control of your money and make sure that you are in control of your financial future and you get to where you want to go at the end of the day, which might be retirement or being able to take better care of your family or whatever it is. So that's my story. That's how I ended up becoming a financial coach, really, because I feel somewhat morally obligated to. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, and I want people to either learn how to invest on their own or find someone great like you that's actually going to educate them. And so part of what I do is also help people learn how to talk to people that are managing their money as well.
Yeah, and I think, some of the things that you mentioned, like, and this could be, before I started working with clients on my own, I was in the compliance department at a broker dealer for over 10 years. And I'd seen a lot of things and a lot of the products where and it really hurts me to hear people say, like, I felt so stupid, I didn't understand it, I was so ashamed. because these products sometimes are so complicated that me as a person who is like approving and looking at new business would have to like ask a vendor to come in to explain this product to me. These are not things that people would just say, hey, I think I need this product. They are absolutely sold to you. And they are, I think, unnecessarily complex in order for people to be like, I'm going to tune out right now because I don't understand what you're saying or what you're talking about. And these actually pay advisors a lot of money. And so there's certified financial planners who are fee only, and then there's some that work in different places and get paid all sorts of different ways. But there's no good reason why you should have understood what that product did or said, because it so many of these sales I would find would be inappropriate for the person, for their age, like you mentioned, for their needs. And it seemed more appropriate because they paid out really well for those advisors. So they're not, it's interesting, how it's good that you're talking to people about what financial planners do, what investment advisors do, how to actually invest your money, because some people can, and even the people that hand things off and say you do the investment decisions, I really really love it when they want to talk more about what they own and why, or what is our strategy for this quarter, why did we do this, because I think that it's interesting. To me it's interesting, but it's also not that hard to understand if you're somebody that's learned how to maybe market your business or learned how to do anything that you weren't taught in high school, which most people have been. Like most people are like, oh, I do this job, or like they're, working in biotech, or they're, learned SEO on what, like you didn't learn this in high school either, but you figured it out. And so I think that that's just such there's so much shame and guilt that it's just unnecessary. So I love that you're helping people kind of take a look at what they want to do, and kind of helping them figure out a way to get there. What are
Totally.
some of those things that you're seeing people, do you feel like a lot of people know what their advisor does?
No, I think most people don't. The few people that I've talked to, usually the ones that know, work with a fee only planner like you, somebody that will explain to them the details. But I think there, to your point about not learning this in high school or college or anywhere, the difference between investing and some of the other things we learn as an adult is that there are so many perpetuated myths around investing that we don't even approach the topic. Whereas I agree with you there. If you're listening to this and you're a mom, or you own a business, or you work in any kind of job that requires like some knowledge gathering, you've probably done way more complicated things than understand how the stock market works and the basics of investing. You've definitely done harder things, but it just feels like this big amorphous, really scary topic that we don't want to talk about. And there's a lot of also like fear in the media. Like every other article is like the stock market's crashing and the stock market's going up and the S&P's down, now it's up, and Jerome Powell said this and the same thing he said yesterday made the stock market go down. So it can like feel really hard to understand, but once you get a little bit of education, it's such a game changer. And so back to your question, yeah, I think a lot of people invest with financial advisors and hand their money over. And if they're lucky enough to find somebody like you that's going to be transparent about fees and be able to help them really plan, that's awesome. But most people that I work with aren't finding people that are explaining what's going on with their money. And I've seen people work with certified financial planners that want to invest in a Roth IRA, which is an individual retirement account, and they put their money in the Roth, and then that money is not actually invested. And so at that point, their financial advisor may or may not be getting paid for their money to sit in an account that's just like a glorified bank account. And I've seen that like more often than once, which is really sad.
That's, yeah, and I've definitely seen that, and I think that even like I even in the book I wrote, I kind of spent some time talking about, because that's like something that people don't understand, that these accounts are not investments. They're like the suitcase, and like the clothes inside are what you're invest. So basically, yeah, you're not getting any of those tax benefits if your Roth IRA is sitting in a money market not growing. And so like that is like I've seen people do that in their own 401ks, or they put it in the money market and then they think they'll go back and invest it and forget. And like that's like, okay, we'll fix that. we'll go in and fix that. But when I see like that happen for somebody who had a financial advisor, that is them not doing their job. Like that is
Exactly.
like basically like but like bare minimum is make sure like this money is actually invested in some portfolio. What it's crazy, but I guess like that's where, and I have had clients who have been like, we don't need to meet. I trust you. And I'm like, yes, we do. Even if I just want to know if you're okay, I want to know what's going on in your life. Like, there's always something to talk about, like whether it's work, whether they're retired or whatever. I make sure I get them on the phone because, like, I'm looking at stuff and things might be fine, but like, I think I owe it to my clients, even if they don't want to know, to kind of just like sprinkle in, like, okay, I'm just gonna tell you anyway, like for
Totally.
my sake, because I just feel uncomfortable that like that level. And I'm again, it's the compliance background being like, yeah, but like, no, everybody you work with and pay, like whether it's, somebody ask what's going on,
Yes.
check in and make sure that like, it's still in, and that's okay. You could still definitely outsource certain things. I don't do my own taxes, but I like sitting down and talking with the guy, seeing what's going on, asking some questions about, okay, what's changed in the past year? What can I take advantage of? Rather than just,
Yeah, and I
get
think
it.
that's exactly. I think that's a great indication that you have a good financial advisor or planner if somebody's asking you questions, because the how you invest your money is going to depend on what life choices are coming up for you, and what your retirement horizon looks like. And so if they aren't asking you those questions and you're not having those conversations with your financial advisor, then something's wrong,
Yeah.
because they can't possibly act in your best interest if
Mhm.
they don't know you.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that I've seen with certain people investing with financial advisors is a lot of times they'll tell me, well, I asked and they just said I like don't need to worry about it, or like it's too complicated for me to understand. And that is straight up shaming. Like that's ridiculous. No one should ever tell you that. This is like, you're basically, they're implying like you're like too dumb to
Yeah, this
understand
is
like what
over
this
your
is.
head. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I think honestly, it's because they probably don't have a great answer. Or like, if you don't know something well enough that, like, my son is 10 years old, the things that I know really well, I could explain to him in a way that he understands. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with using basic terms and like relatable analogies so people can kind of get a better grasp of it. I was at the Home Depot trying to pick out paint, and this is not my area of expertise, and there was all these colors, there's all these types of finish and stuff like that, and I felt like an idiot. And so I was like in this situation where I'm like, this is how people feel sometimes when they come to me and they're like, look, can you just tell me what to do, because I'm completely lost here. And like, if somebody was like, this is over your head, but if someone was like, okay, if you like this or you like this look, then this is going to be it. And I'm like, okay, thank you, like spend a few minutes. But a lot of advisors really just want the money to move over and they don't want to hear from you again, period. And
Yeah.
then I think that's kind of a different structure between wanting to have the most money under management or the most clients, rather than having like, uh I like to be able, if my clients call me, to be like, oh good, hi, and answer the phone. But I'm picky with who I work. Like, I don't work with just everybody who's just like, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. So I think like that's kind of important, for even other advisors who are thinking like, I want to grow my practice, but it's really hard to make money in the way I want to. It's possible. It's just, it's going to be a little bit different than maybe the way most of us were trained. And
Yeah.
it was like, go get those assets and then keep moving on like a hunter. It's crazy. But there is a lot going on with people lately. I've seen definitely an uptick in people reaching out. People are thinking about what's going on in the banking world. People are thinking about what's going on with layoffs. They're hearing a lot. So, from your perspective, when you're talking to people about, even just early stages of like getting their finances in order, what are some of the things that you're recommending people start with, like right now, if there's somebody who's a little bit afraid of what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I always recommend people start with is some of the basics are make sure you have an emergency fund of money in a high yield savings account. And one thing that a lot of people are panicking about now with Silicon Valley Bank is like, is their money safe in these banks and where else should they put it? The thing is, all of these banks online, most of them are FDIC insured. Like, unless you're having over $250,000 in your bank account, you're going to be fine. And even SoFi, which has a high yield savings account, they just upped their coverage to 2 million, I think, for accounts. So don't let this bank collapse stop you from setting up using a high yield savings account, that's like the one thing that I think everyone should do. It takes 15 minutes. Google like best high yield savings accounts. You'll find a couple options. There's lots of different ones. And right now with the interest rates how high they are, you can start putting your money in a high yield savings account and get 3 or 4%. It's amazing. So that is a like no-brainer place to start.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. There's a lot of people that don't know about them. And I was doing some digging on like banking, and like most people are with the same bank that they've always been with. And so I think that there is a large hassle to changing your banks for everything, but also like I have a bank that I don't love that I use for my transactions, and I have a high yield savings account linked to it. I move money from there over, and then within a day if I need to pull that money back in, it is there. It's super liquid. So this is something, people are looking for better interest rates. They're looking at CDs, high yield savings accounts right now. It's really a no-brainer. If you have your emergency fund that is for like, it's not for your day-to-day use. And like people like when they do open it, I usually get an email back after that next statement being like, I made more money than like I've ever gotten from any of like the big massive banks that are paying a tenth of a percent to loan out your money and make
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It does, to your point, it can feel like a lot to move your money over. So you don't have to necessarily like exactly what you're doing. You don't have to like shut down your bank. But if you're holding cash for a short-term purchase or for emergency fund or uh, a trip you're planning, whatever it is, you can get it back very fast in a high yield savings account. And I think to your point, people feel like it's not liquid, like they're not going to be able to get that money back, and it's really fast. So that's a really important thing to set up and to understand. A total no-brainer. And then the other thing I'm thinking a lot about right now and talking to a lot of people about is we are in a strange economic place. There's always something strange going on, by the way. I don't know if it's any more strange than what we've experienced in past cycles, but right now it is definitely strange. And so if you are thinking about what your next 6 to 12 months looks like, you have to understand like what are the chances that you could lose your income? And are you prepared to be okay for a few months? And are you making decisions now that could impact you in the future? So I know a lot of people that over the last year bought a property and they are at risk of losing their job, or they have lost their job because of layoffs. And so building that buffer in that if something does happen, that you're going to be okay is really important, especially right now when there is a lot of uncertainty in the economy and a lot of job changeover, pretty
Yeah.
significant.
I've been doing a lot of financial plans with people lately, and it's good to do this now, especially if they have something like a home purchase on the horizon. Or some people have been a little, some have been impacted already by layoffs, or they feel like, I'm not so sure. And I'm a little scared, in my industry. I'm hearing things. And I worked in, like a large, company for a while. There was always rumor, like there was always layoffs. So I think like that's not something that's, hasn't been around most people in corporate. I think that it is important to have that emergency to kind of know how much, okay, like how long could I be? Okay, what is the summer? Like know your benefits and things like that. But I think that there's a lot of planning that can go into, because if you don't know how much, if you're just looking at how much you can afford for a down payment and bringing everything down to zero, like real estate, I think it's tough to find those deals that some people might have been finding years ago, and like the interest rates are high, money is expensive, and so it's like that has to be a very I like to poke holes at that decision when we're doing the plans to say like, okay, what if this scenario happens, and if it works, great, move, do it, go quickly. But like sometimes it is, you know it's not so bad to rent
No, definitely not.
or
Especially
stay where you are, even if it means you're living in a smaller place for a little while and you want you want to change. Like there are like driving the same car, like, okay, maybe we run it a little longer in times like this. So I think that that's important. And I do hear a lot of people talking about real estate and still wanting to find a place to live, but you invested in real estate. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience with real estate and even with house hacking, and how you made that work, how you found, where you wanted to be. and yeah, and maybe some tips for people who are like, I think that's what I want to do, but they really might not understand the whole picture with that.
Yes. So my first real estate investment was about 10 years ago, and I bought a small single family in Florida because I had done enough of the math to understand that it could cash flow. And I did not understand the amount of work and additional money that I would have to do to the house. And so thankfully, it was a small enough investment, and I was smart enough at the time to create a buffer for myself to say, okay, if this house goes totally sideways, I want to make sure I have enough cash to fix it up. And it did. It went totally sideways. I had to fix everything. I don't think I got a proper inspection. I was very young. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew enough to make sure that I didn't put all of my money into this one property. And so I would say that if you are interested, you can do all the homework in the world, but stuff's going to come up that you're not prepared for. So just know that, like, your down payment and your mortgage are definitely not the only costs. You have to consider vacancy rates, capital expenditures, which are long-term improvements to the property, repairs, and it all adds up. So that house didn't actually cash flow for a long time. I spent most of the money went right back into the house. And then years later, I invested in another condo and a couple multifamily properties. And those were fantastic investments, especially if you're looking to start investing in a property, but you're not sure where to start. I personally think a house hack is an incredible option for people. And the reason why I love it is because you do get ownership. So if you're somebody that wants to be a homeowner, and I get there's like pride of ownership, right? It's nice to want to own a property, but the down payment is concerning to you. When you buy a 2 or 3 family, you can owner occupy, you live in one side, and then you rent out the other. And very likely things will go wrong with that property as well. But now you're splitting the mortgage with somebody else, and it can, or in some cases, covering my mortgage is almost completely covered by the other side of the property. So if you're on the fence and you're looking at your finances and you're just like, I really want to buy a house, but if we, own it ourselves, it's going to be a lot of money. It's worth it to look into a multifamily. Is it a sacrifice? Yes. Like, you're sharing your space in some ways in the yard, or, different common areas, whatever it is. I can't emphasize enough how grateful I am that I made that decision and made that small sacrifice. Just a few years living in a house hack and not having to really pay a mortgage or rent was absolutely life-changing for my finances. So it is something to think about if you're a first-time home buyer. It's not just total smooth sailing, but it is really, really valuable. And the last thing I'll say on real estate investing is things have changed since I first bought my properties. Interest rates have gone up considerably. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'll just buy now, and then when interest rates drop, I'll refinance. And that's not a good strategy because right now the 30-year mortgage rate is about 7%. Historically, over the last 30 years, it's about 7%. So you need to buy for your money today. Like, can you afford the mortgage today? And assuming that interest rate is not going to go down at all. If it does, great, awesome, refinance, but like, don't plan into that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that, like, I've been looking when we do, when I do plan kind of, I'm using like, give me the numbers that the lender gave you. We're going to use those because yes, you probably can afford it. If it goes back to 2%, it may never do that again. Yeah. Or 3% or 4%. And it's like, yeah, of course we're going to want to refinance. And I've talked to some really amazing like mortgage lenders that I know in this area that, like, ask them what they do. If there is a drop, what is the process for you? Is it automatically going to go down? But also, we're going to play with today's money.
Yeah.
In today's dollars and see how it looks. And for some people, if they had an arm that's coming up, if they have something like that with a mortgage where they're going to have to, like, yeah, it's going to hurt. And that's one of the risks you take. So it's like, okay, let's see what we can afford. People want to do renovations. They want to do other things. And money is very, it just costs more now than it did like when I bought my property. And then even when we got a rental property, like, there was a lot of work that had to be done. It has not turned a profit yet. It's kind of like a longer term decision that we both wanted, but like I was running the numbers as in, like, if we make nothing for several years, can we afford it? And like, we could, but it was finding the right thing at the right time. And a lot of people, and I love my realtor friends who are like making videos like, now's the time to sell, it's a great time. And it's like half of them people I talk to, I'm like, but where are you going? Like, we gotta find a place to live. So I think, yeah, having if you are thinking about wanting to be a landlord or own properties like for rental income, I think living in half of it as well really gets you to know the property and the repair, like, the building well. So I think then if you move out of it and then you have two, like, being close by is helpful, because when you have somebody else who's managing a property and you're a few states away, it can be maybe, you have to put a lot of trust in other people to help. So I think it is a great way to do it, and I think that some people do have a goal of real estate. So it's kind of, again, with the pandemic and everything, it was tough for landlords to be sure they were going to get their money. So it's not a slam dunk like on the TV shows sometimes.
No, it's definitely
But
not
it
a
can
slam
be
dunk.
worth it. But it's like, I love that you're helping people kind of go into that with like very like open eyes and
Yeah.
understanding like these are the pros and cons, which is good. So tell me a little bit, more about like, when you're talking with somebody, like what are some of the biggest, I know fear is something that I see a lot of people, when I talk to them, they're really afraid of making that step, or they feel like they should have done it sooner. And I've talked to clients. I helped a client who was like in her late 60s improve her credit score. There's no late in my mind. Like if we're still spending money until, like, well, we're still walking around living like money is going to be an issue. So how is that something that you think people use to hold themselves back or to kind of stay in the dark? Because I don't think there's an age limit. My parents are in their late 70s, and I feel like right now if they said, hey, I think I'm going to open a high yield savings, I'd be like, finally, like taking my
Yeah.
advice, because you might live into your 90s like my grandmother did. So what are
Yes.
your thoughts when you hear people that are just like, the objections are just like, nope, it's just too late for me?
Yes. So backing up, when I decided to become a financial coach and start sharing a lot of content around money, I started, and I have an online course that walks you through everything. I actually started with some tactical things around how to invest. And what I quickly realized was that, as we already talked about in this episode, that's not the hardest part. It's getting your mind in the right headspace. And a lot of the reason why we have so much fear around money is our perception of what other people are doing. So comparison is the thief of joy. And that's one of my favorite quotes. There are so many people. I work with mostly women in their 30s and 40s. That's mostly the students that I have that go through my program. And all of them think they're behind. Every single person thinks that they are behind, regardless of how old they are. Because once they learn about investing, they think, oh, I should have been doing this in my 20s. There are very few people that have their shit together in their 20s that are like, I am like investing. I have my Roth. I had one person that's 24 that did that, but like that is very uncommon. And it's usually not until your 30s or your 40s when you're like, okay, now I have some money, or I have a job, or I have a family, and I need to be a little bit smarter with what I'm doing. So first of all, that's the thing I hear the most is like, I'm so far behind. And I have another woman who's 55 who's been learning, and she's deep. She loves it. She's really excited, and she just got a great job, and her entire retirement is going to look different because of what she does between now and the time she's 65. So it is not too late, depending on how old you are. And to your point, even if you're in retirement, there are small things you can do that can make a big difference to the amount of money that you have in and during retirement. So that's the first thing I hear a lot, is that I'm behind. The other thing I hear from people is that they are not starting because they think they don't have enough money. And you really don't, or they have debt and they can't start investing. So what I see a lot is people with student loans or even house loans that are under 6%. And actually, Misty, I'd be curious to know your percentage here of what you think. But a lot of people want to pay off all their debt before they start investing. And then what happens if you do that, especially if it's low interest debt, is you're missing out on years of opportunity to compound the money that you already have by investing in the stock market and benefiting from compound interest, which is the magical math equation that makes this all worth it. And so I see a lot of people are like trying to pay down their student loans or their mortgages. And quite frankly, most of the time, if your interest rate is under 6 or 7%, you're going to do better by paying the minimum on that and getting started building your net worth. And I also think there's psychology to that too. Like if you are, building some money in investments while paying down your debt, that can help you gain momentum to continue to build wealth and get excited about what your financial future would look like. So those are two things I see a lot. And you know, we've talked a lot about just the fear of getting started and that it's too complicated, and it's just not. There's so many different ways to get started, whether you do it on your own with a robo-advisor, with a fee only a financial planner
Mhm.
like you. Like, there's so many ways to get started, and it doesn't take that much time. I think that's maybe the third thing would be, everyone's busy in their lives, working super hard. You have kids, whatever it is. You spend, you know, in most jobs, 40 hours a week working for paper,
Mhm.
for money. And then if you're spending 0 hours managing that money or finding somebody else to manage your money, you're doing it wrong. And I don't say that to shame you. I'm just saying that you are trading so much of your time to make that money. You might as well spend a little bit more time, not a lot, a little bit more time making sure that money is working for you. And when I put it that way, a lot of people go, oh, okay, I should
Yeah. No, it's
probably pay
true.
more
A lot
attention
of
to this.
people, like most Americans, like spend more time like planning a vacation or researching buying a car than they do their entire retirement.
Yeah.
Because it's not as fun. Let's be honest. If you're planning a bachelorette party and you're like, okay, I'm gonna spend hours on this and this is our itinerary and agenda. And I've seen some of my friends that they can bust out a very beautiful itinerary and agenda and they can make the whole plans. Then it comes to their money and they're like, I don't have time to do that. Yes, you do. It's just setting time to do it, setting time to talk to your partner about your finances, like sitting down, like who cares? Just do it. It's like I mean, people spend a lot of time in meetings that they don't enjoy or don't feel like we're that productive at the office, where if you spend an hour looking at your finances, you will make progress. It's just getting people to feel like that's a good use of their time. Then usually it's just because they're afraid or ashamed.
Yeah. And it's, you're right. Like, we're talking about hours here. Like,
Not
my online program is like an hour a week for 5 weeks, and it will, like, you'll be way more educated.
yeah.
And that's even if even if you spend an hour finding a great fee only, if you're like, I don't want to do that, I can't do that,
Mhm.
spend an hour and find a great fee only financial planner like yourself. And once it's set up, it's not like you have to like keep doing stuff. Like, the best
Wow.
investing strategies are pretty straightforward and simple, and most of it is like, buy some investments and set it and leave it alone, and you make a few adjustments. It's
Yeah.
not like day trading. And I think that's the other thing that people equate investing to is, oh, I'm going to invest and I have to get on Robinhood and like be
Yeah.
trading all these stocks. And like, a lot of those apps are gamifying it and making it exciting to trade and like
Yeah.
encouraging you to do that. The best type of investing, the smartest people that are investing your money for you, or teaching you about investing, it's boring. To your point, it's
Mhm.
not sexy, it's not
No.
exciting, but the boring, simple strategies, like, those are the ones that work. So once you set it up, it's
Yeah.
not something that you have to spend a lot of time. You just need to do that initial effort to get stuff set up, and then you'll be good.
Yeah, no, there's so much to like that. And like I think one of the things about setting it up, like when I personally started investing, I had debt. I had student loan debts. I didn't have very, I think I was making maybe $30,000 a year. I didn't have a lot of free cash or anything like that. But I was one of those people in my 20s that like I knew that people were doing it differently. I started reading about money and investing when I was in like high school, and I started investing as soon as I could. I don't even, my interest rate, I didn't care. I was like, okay, do you offer a 401k? And my job did. So I started participating because they were matching it. So I feel like there are ways that you could start, because the earlier you start, um, you could always do more, but it's going from 0 to 1, almost with like being a mom or whatever. Like it doesn't get like, that's the hardest part. Then you can go, you could add more to it. You can make investment changes as you learn more about it. But I feel like it gets harder and harder as I see people get older and more established in their career. They're making more money now to say, oh, I have to put 10% of my income into, this plan or try to save it, when like it wasn't, when I was making very, low income, 10% was still money I wanted, but I started with like, okay, they matched 4%. So I did 4.
Yeah.
I paid my bills. I did other things. I saved money, but I was like, there's no way I'm not going to do what people who are the wealthy people, what's the president of the company doing? Is he participating? Good. So am I. Employee stock options. I was like, what are they doing? I want them. And like my friends weren't super into it or cared. I don't think all of them did, but I just knew like time was kind of on your side. And I love it when I find a client in their 20s, because I have had a few people that have wanted to do planning, and I'm like, look, this plan's going to be totally different 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So like tell, like, with these like predictable increases in salary and stuff, like, it's garbage. However, we can do some things now that will absolutely change your life. And I have some clients in their 20s that are making good money. They're doing well, or they found a business that's taking off, and they're like, everyone treats me like a kid. And I was just like, let's just, you'll have more options down the road the sooner you start. And so I think that people are just in a different position now when it comes to the amount of debt and the amount of how expensive things have gotten. And so it is. But if you are out there, I saw the average like bachelorette party, people are spending like thousands of dollars, and it's just like, you're going there. So you could slide a little money into that Roth.
Yeah.
And put it on autopilot and make it super easy. So like, you don't even see it, because it'll have a big impact where like, it's just kind of getting out of control with like where the priorities are. It's really hard though when you're seeing things on social media and stuff like that. That's why I love that your social media has grown so much, because I'm like, people are listening to money. This is exciting.
Yeah.
You can find people that are sharing tips that you actually want to consume and share, which I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do spend a lot of time on social media, and I do try to get rid of the financial jargon, because to your point, right? Like, if if you're investing a small amount every month when you're young in your 20s, it's going to make a massive difference when you're older. And then sometimes, I have one student that went through my course, and she was able to invest like 300 or 400 a month, which was amazing for her. And then a bunch of stuff happened with her kids. She's a single mom, entrepreneur, superhero, and she had to pull it back. But because she understands compound interest, she's like, if all I can do is $100 a month, I'm still going to do something. And that's like a really important skill, I think, and habit to get into, is even if you don't have to invest 2,000 every single month. You might not be able to do that. Just do something. And then as the seasons of life change, and you can adjust it, if you're doing something every month, you're 9 times out of 10, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And I think that all or nothing mentality kind of holds people back. Like with my kids, when they were born, I think they were 8 weeks old, I started their 529 plan, and I started with $25, I think once every week or once every 2 weeks. And it was, my husband's like, what is that? What is the point of that? And I was just like, it's just starting it. Like, I want to start it now. Now, because my son was born in 2012. So that was like 8 years of bull market. So it was over 14,000.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
That's not nothing. And he's 10. So it's like that's not money I missed. That money is going to go to CVS or something. Like, it's not like it's sitting in a pile of cash that I could have done something else with. Cash, it's gone. Like,
exactly.
But now it's like, okay, those little things, just feeling like, okay, is that going to pay for, if he goes to like BC, is that going to pay for all? No. Am I going to have money though, that I can say, yes, here, you take this. This is for you. And then I won't say, I want to take money out of my retirement plan or out of the business or out of somewhere else, because I love him and I'm going to want to help him. And that's what people do. They look at what's on fire right now, and that becomes the priority. And then they take from everywhere else, where I'm like, if I have this for this for that, then at least they'll say, hey, you know what? And we'll figure out the rest or the remainder. But just getting started with a little bit of money, I think it does just kind of build some habits. And then you're like, okay, hey, at least I'm in it.
Yes.
Starting is so hard. And you mentioned something else that I want to go back to that I found really interesting. And I see this all the time when you talked about comparison being the thief of joy. I haven't talked to a single person who, when I ask about like what their financial goals are, they immediately tell me that they're boring. And I'm like, why do you say that? Oh, because maybe they like to stay local. Maybe they don't want to travel to Bali, or they're not like, they're just, and I was like, when did it change that we were so ashamed of like not wanting to like, it's interesting, because I was just like, oh, it sounds like you like your community, you like your home, or you like, maybe, but like we all feel like we're not doing it right when it comes to money. And so I wish people were more empowered in just like their choices. If they said like, hey, yeah, I hate I hate airplanes, so I take day trips. Cool, that's wonderful. Maybe we can figure out like, or we can upgrade your, your lifestyle, your home, your yard, like whatever it is that you're interested in. Because I think we see other people now, and we're like, I'm either far behind, or it's too late, or like, Oh, they live such lavish lifestyles that like I think it's funny how like really just owning what you actually want
Yeah.
can really help you get a lot farther because you're like, hey, I might be closer than I think. So it's just something that I feel like there's like no escaping this shame
Yeah, truly. I mean, there's
anywhere.
truly, there is nothing wrong with saying, I would love to have enough money to retire comfortably in a normal size house and work in my garden and spend time with my family. Like that is the dream.
That's
But
great.
what you see is, whatever,
Oh,
these
yeah.
planes and stuff on Instagram. And it was really funny actually. I did this one post or a stitch, and I saw this mortgage lender was commenting on, everybody keeps asking, this influencer was like, oh, everybody keeps sharing their kitchens and these $50,000-$100,000 kitchens, like how are they affording that? And the mortgage lender is like, I've been a mortgage lender for 20 years, they're all in debt. Like most people with very lavish lifestyles are in debt. And it's true. And so, but on social media you see the highlight reel and then you feel like you're so far behind. But a lot of people I know personally are in rough financial situations, but their Instagram looks like $1 million. And then there's other people, this exact situation actually happened. Someone else was comparing their life, and I happen to know both, they knew each other, and I happen to know both of their financial situations. And the person that lives a more modest life has quadruple the net worth of this other person with this very nice kitchen. And so, this other person that thinks they're behind has a lot more optionality, flexibility, freedom, independence than the person with the nice kitchen. So we do
Yeah.
have to be really careful with what we see online and what we think, where we stack up against what we
Yeah.
see.
No, I think that, and that's kind of like one of the most fun parts of my job is like asking people like what their real goals are because they might be like, oh, it's boring. I just want this. And then I like kind of can get into it. Like, usually there's something, like something that they care about, whether it's rescue animal or something. And I was just like, okay, what if we could like, if we had, the ability to like be more generous in certain area or what, it doesn't always have to be just like travel or upgrades and stuff like that. Because if you can get people to feel excited about what they could potentially build when they're building wealth, then I get people to like really go off the end with like
Yeah.
the things that really make them interesting people. Because I was just like, it's not like there's an answer sheet. And if
Right.
you don't say like travel or like putting an addition on your home, like you're wrong. Like there's so much more you could do when you have like financial like stability and like I don't know. I think there's a lot more ways to make things work. And I'm just like, yeah, if I want to live in like a tiny house in Vermont and like maybe work in the waffle cabin when I'm 65 years old, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna feel amazing about it. And it's just like, you know what? That might not be everybody's goal to like, it's not playing golf in like Augusta, but I don't care. Like that's not what I want. So I don't know. I guess it's just interesting. I just want to make it to like the other side and be like, okay, like I can maybe enjoy it and like what I'm doing for work. So, but I think I love how you're helping people. I love how you've made it happen yourself. And like, I think it's really cool that you're now out there telling other people like, hey, you know, made mistakes before, but like you switched gears and you turn around, now you're helping more people. So how can people find you if they're thinking about making that first step and they think a financial coach is the right decision?
Absolutely. Well, I will share some information with you to put in the show notes. I have a checklist, a financial independence checklist that can help you identify where you might need to focus your energy and time. So that is a great place to start. And then I also share a ton of free information on Instagram at Wealth with Tess. Just two S's. There's a lot of copycats out there in Instagram. So I will never reach out to you and ask you to trade with me or anything like that. I am an educator. So look out for copycats, but I am on Instagram. I share a ton of information on there, and TikTok as well at Wealth with Tess, all one word. And that's the best place to find me. But yeah, shoot me a DM if you have questions and I'd be happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you're right, there are copycats because I like saw like three come up. One of my friends with the photography business just had her Instagram hack. So if you're a business owner, you're in there, make sure that You're locking it down with that two factor because people are crazy out there what they're trying to like, once you do have, a level of success and popularity, how many people start to hack. So find a wealth with Tess. I think that I love what she shares. She's also incredibly strong. I know she mentioned being like the acro, like I love it. I was just like, oh my God, is she on a cliff somewhere doing a handstand? Like it's pretty badass. So I will tell you that. And there's a lot of great information. And you know what? Even if your first step is just starting to consume more information, that can help you feel like, okay, I can understand this, then that is a good place to go. I also love, sharing those tips and ideas and just making sure people feel like, you know what, this is just as important a topic as like what's going on in like Vanderpump Rules or whatever else they're paying attention to. So, and also if you're looking to talk to, to a financial planner, you want to have a discovery call, please head over to mistylynch.com. You can find out ways to reach me or, information about the book and other podcasts. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Misty.